So you're an enterprising colonial leader, maybe a U.S. Army general or Australian or Belgian Army officer, and you come across someone and you've tried to buy it from them and they won't sell, and you've tried to get them to admit that they're the boss, and they won't give it to you. Purchase, conquest, and terra nullius. This is your last option. So purchase. Overall, when conquering a space, the Europeans had to take possession of the land legally. We can't just steal it, right? We have to take it lawfully. That's anybody who owns land today. It's based on a deed, and you have that deed because you paid money and someone signed the deed over to you, the bank or the previous owner, and somebody had signed it over to them, and somebody had signed it over to them, and way back when, you've got a deed that was issued by the federal government or by a state government or a railroad company based on conquest or purchase. It has to be like that. You cannot just create property out of nothing. You have to pay the person who had it before. So purchase upon payment of a sum of money, a legal representative of the former owner signs a document transferring ownership of the land to the person paying the money. So this presupposes at least corporate property ownership. Corporate meaning the tribe owns it. Public ownership, if nobody owns it, nobody can sell it. Conquest upon threat of total defeat. A political representative of the former owner signs a treaty relinquishing ownership of the land to the entity threatening them in return for safe passage to another piece of property. This presupposes chieftaincy, a boss of some sort. Terra nullius, if no one present would claim to be authorized to sign a document transferring ownership or control of the land, the Europeans could declare terra nullius empty land, which made the legal argument that the human beings inhabiting the land are actually not human. Okay? On the one hand, this led to genocide, since an Aboriginal Australian had become legally equivalent to a kangaroo. And even today, if you look at the United States, you look at who, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Indian Health Service, etc. What are they controlled by? They're, not controlled by the Department of Health and Human Services. They're controlled by the Department of the Interior, which also oversees mineral rights and animal populations on national parks. Right? There's a formal equivalency between Native Americans and deer and elk, right? Which is really insulting. But it's a history of just this situation, this terra nullius. If you look today at Australia, we used to hear about Ayers Rock, and if you look at today in Ayers, for Ayers Rock, you won't find it, because that's what the other thing of terra nullius does. Number one, terra nullius was really terrible. It was genocidal, but the result of that. Oh goodness, we're not getting it here. I can find it. Alice Springs. Where's Ayers Rock? Uluru, it's called. We'll just Google it. I look up Ayers Rock, and what do I get? Uluru, right? Why is it Uluru? Because if you declare a terra nullius, you're saying they're not humans. All you have to do is a DNA test. Boom, they're humans. Whoops! That entire claim for that land is null and void because it was based on an inaccuracy claiming that they were non-human when in fact they were human. Boom! Now they get it back. This was Mobble versus Queensland, 1992. But it's been in other places where you had extremely quick takeover. In the United States, it was long term expansion, and the people had a chance to organize themselves as quote tribes and chiefdoms when formerly they had been bands and tribes, and so they had their fake leadership and that became real over the course of a few generations, and some tribal wars and some wars of conquest, and then all of a sudden we do have leaders in Ohio, for example, who were able to surrender around 1815. Finally, after 70, 80 years of brutal warfare, they fought and fought and fought to defend Ohio against the invaders, and finally succumbed around 1814, 1815. To the invaders, but they could sign those treaties because there had been 200 years prior, 200 years of slow and steady contact with them, and they had this idea of property ownership, etc. by that time. In any case, cannibalism is the eating of people by other people, anthropophagy. The etymology of cannibal is Carib, the Caribbean, supposedly cannibalistic groups of the Caribbean. Cannibalism, pretty common actually throughout most societies. It's always been ritualized or motivated, never a regular subsistence strategy. So anytime you hear of cannibals, they're not eating people because this is how they get their food. They're not eating people like the same way they eat a deer. They don't go hunting for people to get food. Uh, Basically, they're fighting against people, or people are just dying. Right? Death happens all the time. It's ritualized. When we find it in a ritual, usually it's funerary. So your grandma died, and you loved her very much, and you want her to be a part of you. So you eat part of her body. Because you love her so much, or war rights. You kill this opponent, and you finally, you've been fighting against him for a long time, and you finally get him, and you kill him, and then you eat part of his body to gain his strength, ritually. Or cannibalism is motivated, but that happens everywhere. That was the Chilean national rugby team or something like that. After a plane crash in the Andes Mountains, ate one another. The Donner Party. You got to do what you got to do to survive, even if it includes eating people. Endocannibalism involves eating the members of the group after they've died as part of mutinery rites. Exocannibalism is the eating of outsiders, typically as part of a war ritual, although in the United States we were eating people throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, as late as 1924. Mummia was still there. These are mummies. There's so many mummies, so many mummified bodies in Egypt because it's so dry there, and they just last forever. And so they were getting, it's called mineral pitch or mummia, basically the ground up mummies, and then put in a little jar and sold for $10 or whatever at the apothecary. And that was pretty common medicine in the 19th and early 20th century. So there you have it, American mummies as well, American cannibals as well, and there's probably other ways too. Programmed to be violent? Probably not. Human violence tends to be explained by social and cultural conditioning. There's probably greater capacity for peace than for conflict among human beings. And I'm just going to stop it right here. We're going to get into. I gotta write up some midterms and finals. Some finals final study guides and final exam because we got to get on this. Okay, it was great having you. See you for the final.